Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So this is the agenda that we have for today. We're going to start with the idea of assessment and how it's connected to the whole concept of on-the-spot feedback. We'll be detailing and understanding the concepts of summative and formative and all that. Then we will be moving on to when this type of feedback should be used, when, why, right? And later on techniques, how we're going to go about them, right? So to start, when we think of feedback, many of us think of assessment. It's a very curious and even cultural thing. Here in Brazil, it's very common that when people think of feedback, they think of like, I'm going to be evaluated, I'm going to be assessed on something. This is very common for adults, yes, but also for, teenagers as well, right? Um, but first, when we think of assessment, there are basically two types of assessment. We can think of summative assessment and formative assessment. Summative assessment happens at the end of the learning process, always as a result of something, right? It provides a final evaluation of, of some sort of knowledge that they learned, right? And is usually a high stake test. So it's easy to remember because summative assessment, you might think of something that sums up, yeah, something, yeah. So summative assessment, you might think of, for example, a midterm test or a final project that they have to present or produce. And when it says a high stake test, it's because usually there's some sort of grading there that ranks students. So it might go from 0 to 10 or A, B, C, D, E, but there's this idea of ranking. I got a 6, you got a 9, things like that, right? Teenagers at schools, at our schools, they might be very familiar with this concept. Formative assessment, on the other hand, happens during the learning process. This word here is very important, during, right? It's ongoing. It happens continuously. Um, and because of that, it's able to identify areas for improvement, right? So during the process, we are able to understand, okay, this, I need to focus on this, I need to get better at this, I need to improve this. And then this idea allows teachers and students to adapt as they go. So they see an area for improvement and they change the course of something. So they're able to pivot their strategies. And it also, this type of assessment provides students the opportunities to implement this sort of feedback. So they understand, okay, I'm wrong. This is something that I need to improve. Let me try again. Yeah. So when you think of yourselves, when you were at school, yeah, when you were kids, teenagers, what type of assessment were you more used to? What type of assessment are your students now more used to? I'm saying this because, well, when I was a student, it was summative assessment all the way, 100%. And even now, the schools that we have, right? The schools that we teach, they are also very much used to the idea of a summative assessment because it's not just the school per se, but it's also when you think of vestibular, Enem, these concepts are also like intertwined with the with what schools want from students in a way. And by no means, by the way, am I trying to say that summative assessment is bad or it shouldn't be used, or I'm not. I'm not against it at all. I'm not. What I am saying is that because we're so used to summative assessment, sometimes we kind of forget the idea of formative assessment. And this is the idea of today. Because On-the-spot feedback, the one that happens at the moment, the one that you see, the teacher sees happening, and you're able to see the area for improvement, and you adapt the lesson, or you change, or you provide the student with something, this is formative assessment. So on-the-spot feedback is very much connected to the idea of formative assessment. Yeah. So when we think of all of this, we are thinking of speaking skills, or maybe not necessarily developing speaking skills per se, but also, but focusing on students' chance to produce language, or producing spoken language, right, in the classroom. To do that, here I provided you with a few moments that this can happen. Now, I know that we've been having webinars on that. We've had a webinar on classroom language, on oral practice, yeah, and emergent language as well. So the focus is to have students understand that the lessons that we have are lessons that they are able to speak. And sometimes you might ask me, but Bianca, they're not fluent enough, or they can't really produce much, and it's okay, right? Sometimes they can and they should, it's fine. But even if they can't, they are able to produce accordingly. So it might be through the use of songs and games, right? Simon Says, for example, What's in the Bag. We all love these games. We love them. The students love them as well. So, but they're games that students are able to take the lead in a way and produce more, right? In a more active manner. When students are comparing answers, again, you might think that this is more passive, but again, students are producing language, especially if you tell them to do so, right? They're comparing their answers when there's a book activity, for instance, and they share how much they know, or the results, things like that. When they have to give their opinions or talk about a task that they have, they might also use this type of language, even if they're using Portuguese first, but this part they can use English, right? They can role play scenarios, like talking to I don't know, talking to a friend who's moved away, or ordering food, talking to parents, things like that. And well, all of this basically are examples of speaking tests that there is some sort of scaffolding involved. So you might show them like cards with sentence starters and they need to complete them, or key phrases and they need to come up with the rest. You might use visuals, realia. There's a whole, the sky's the limit, basically, right? But the focus here, the point is, in order for us to provide students with on-the-spot feedback, or feedback in general, you need to have them speak. Of course, we might provide them with feedback on other skills as well, on reading, listening, on writing. Of course, there's all that. And even on tests, right? On summative assessment. Yes, of course. But to provide them with on-the-spot feedback, the focus is speaking. So the question is, are you providing them with enough speaking moments in the classroom for them to produce, and so that you can intervene and adapt and correct what they're saying? Think about it, and when we come back, we'll be talking about a little bit more of speaking practice.